Thank you for joining us. Please take your seat. The session is about to begin. Please join us for A Killer Partnership, a conversation with Jamie Lee Curtis and Jason Blum, moderated by The Hollywood Reporter's editor-at-large, Kim Masters.
Well, wow. Hi, everyone.
Hello, everybody. The mic works. Incredible.
Okay, now settle down, you two. I'm going to introduce you to a couple of people you probably already know. The legendary actress, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Hello. You turn 50, you become a legend. It's so fun.
True Lies, A Fish Called Wanda, Halloween, Knives Out, and Everything Everywhere All at Once. You should, if you have not seen it, and brace yourself. And legendary producer, Jason Blum.
Also 50 and a legend. That's right.
He's a 3-time Academy Award nominee. He is a 2-time Emmy Award winner. He is a 3-time Peabody Award winner. His films include Get Out, Invisible Man, The Purge, Halloween. Okay, so now I will deal with this other thing. I will mention here at the beginning that Jamie Lee Curtis's films have generated $2.3 billion at the box office. So Jason, what made you want to go to work with Jamie?
Exactly.
Wow.
Is that our first question?
Pardon?
What made me want to work with Jamie?
Yeah,
I couldn't tell if that was a. What made me want to work with Jamie?
A little bit of a joke, but it's serious.
Well, okay. Are you still introducing, or are we we're off to the races?
We're off to the races.
Fantastic.
Go, Jason.
I wanted to work with Jamie for many reasons, and our first collaboration was Halloween, right? So we approached the rights holders of Halloween, and we said we'd like to make like a Blumhouse version of Halloween, and Malaparte who's been shepherding the Halloween franchise for many years and doing a terrific job at it.
Whose father, Mustafa Akkad, produced the original movie. Mustafa,
That's right.
Who was tragically killed in a suicide bombing with his daughter. Malak has carried on the family tradition. Runs the family business.
And made a movie about that, made a documentary
Yes.
about that as well, yeah. And he runs the family business, which is Halloween, which is kind of an amazing business. And it has many tentacles, which you wouldn't necessarily think of, but he's got merchandising and anyone who wants to do a play or a haunted house of Halloween, or there's all sorts of things that he's managing as he manages that franchise. And we went to him and said, we'd love to do a Blumhouse version of Halloween. And he was kind enough to kind of let us partner with us. And the first thing I really wanted to do was to try and bring back a closer connection with the original Halloween. So that meant the great Jamie Lee Curtis.
The great Jamie. Okay, Jamie.
Yes, ma'am.
Halloween was your first feature film?
I was 19 years old.
I was just going to ask that, so thank you. That was a few short years ago.
It was 17 days in 1978. Was made for $300,000.
Wow.
Money from Mustafa Akkad to Irwin Yablans, who was a producer, who went to John Carpenter, who was the director, and said, make us a babysitter slasher movie, which I think the late, great Deborah Hill, who was John's girlfriend at the time and the co-writer, I think she decided, actually, I think it was Irwin Yablans who said, set it on Halloween night, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Right. So you made how many movies?
I made a few.
A few. Yes.
I think there have
You
been
mean Halloween
There have
movies?
been 17.
Halloween.
Okay,
17.
so the truth of the matter is I made Halloween, and then I made Halloween 2 because it was a direct sequel. It picked up immediately where the first movie left off, and I felt at the time, even though John Carpenter was not directing it, I felt that the audience deserved to see the same woman in the part, since it picked up immediately. And then I didn't make another Halloween for a very long time until I realized that it was coming up on the 20th anniversary. And at the time I thought, has there ever been another movie where the same actors and the same creative team made a movie 20 years later?
I think that was.
And that was called H2O.
1998.
That was 20 years later.
Right.
And then, and that was successful. And then the last thing I thought I would do is another Halloween movie until Mr. Blum convinced David Gordon Green to
Well, there
call
was
me.
Halloween Resurrection.
Oh, I can't tell you that story. It would take up our entire time. It involved. Wow, can I tell this story? You guys won't tell anyone, right? It involved the end of H2O, which I always assumed and understood that it would be the end of Mr. Myers. That was the reason for doing it 20 years later. And it turned out that there was some legal maneuvering that we couldn't end Mr. Myers, if you know what I mean. And I was so angry, because at this point we were already in the process of making the movie. I said, okay, you now have to pay me a sum of money that all you business people would be very impressed that I just demanded for 2 days' work in the next movie where I had to die. Because if I now have perpetuated the myth unwittingly, I felt that then I needed to die.
You have to pay for your
well,
bait and
no,
switch.
I think Laurie Strode would not be able to live with herself. And so if you've seen, excuse me, non-COVID, just a tiny little cold, just like we all used to get, remember those? Anyway, so I did that resurrection movie for money, and then the last thing I thought I would do.
And then we got to 2000, well, it would have been before the movie came out in 2018, so we would be, when, Jason?
When did we get into 2000?
It was summer
2017.
2017 summer.
Yeah, the first thing I did is actually I went back to John Carpenter, which is kind of a funny story, who hadn't been involved in the movies for a long time, but he loved to tweet about them and disparage them. And I went to, he's got a little house in Hollywood, which is he has a separate house that he lives in, but his office is in a little house in the flats. And I never met him before, and I went in, kind of my hat in hand, and I said, you know, I'm thinking of making a Halloween movie. And he almost threw me out of the house at that point, but I managed to convince him to listen to me for 17 minutes. And on the 15th minute, I said, look, John, they're making this movie. They're gonna make this Halloween, the 15th one, and they're gonna make it with or without us. But if they make it with me, I'm making it with you. And if they don't make it with me, I don't want to make it with you. But it's totally up to you what you want to do. And I actually left, and I was sure he was going to say no. And miraculously, I got a call from his agent the next day, and he said, you know what, I'll give it a whirl. And so began, for me, a new partnership, for you, a lifelong partnership. And we got this terrific director who we both all love and have worked with many times. Writer-director, David Gordon Green. And David, I don't think would have done it had John not been involved. So it worked out terrifically well for all parties involved, and I'm very proud of the movies. We've made 3 of them, and the third one I'm about to see in 2 weeks, and I haven't seen it yet.
So you, after all of that and the bad experience on the last one, what makes you decide to revisit that old stomping ground?
You know, there's something about these movies that people love. Now, I don't love them. I'm just going to tell you all, I don't love them. I scare easily.
Me too. And
I just can't imagine turning over my hard-earned after-tax dollars to be scared. I'm scared enough. No politics involved. And, you know, so it's not a genre I love, and it's the genre that's given me my entire creative life. The reason I did it is because David wrote something that dealt with trauma, dealt with the actual reality of what happens when someone has been haunting you, stalking you, the concentric circles of traumatic experiences that someone carries. Those wounds do not heal. And you know, we make these movies, we throw them out to audiences, people scream, and then they go home. But these characters, Laurie Strode has lived for a very long time in the hearts and minds of people. And I really liked the fact that you were able to identify the very thing that is the byproduct of being terrorized by someone, which is trauma. And that the movie was about that. And we became very lucky because it coincided with the women's Me Too movement. So a lot of oppressed women were standing up and saying, no more. And Laurie Strode stood up and said, no more. And I think that sort of confluence of those two things certainly catapulted the movie to success that I'm not sure any of us ever imagined.
Right. Yeah, good. You know, one of the things about I've taken away from Hollywood and putting together movies is that good and experienced artists attract good and experienced artists. And I think one of the problems with horror, because it's a commercial genre, it's known as a commercial genre, is that studios often look at it and say like, hey, you know, let's hire someone who doesn't have that much experience and not have to pay him so much so we can keep more of the money. And I always think that's a big mistake. I always think it's much better to share more of what the movie may make in hopes that the pot will be much bigger if you're working with more experienced people. And you know, that was certainly the case here. And like I said, David Gordon Green was very, very connected with what John Carpenter was going to do on the movie. Like that, he really, really cared about that. And we do remakes a lot. And when we buy a remake, I'm very careful that the director we're buying, the director of the original movie, is on board with someone else remaking his movie and is willing to speak to them. And when we go send a remake to directors, the first question they ask is, what does the original director think? And that's because usually Hollywood buys the original movie, doesn't tell the original director anything, and goes off. So it's been a great lesson to work with terrific people, and they attract other terrific people and pay them well.
But I also need to say something about Jason, because this is a business conference. This isn't a horror movie convention.
Wait a second.
And if it
I'm
was, I would sign your mouth.
As far as we know.
That's all I'm saying to you. You know, the reason I'm also in business with Jason is because of his business model, his drive, his passion, his chutzpah, his hustle. And I don't know if any of you have watched his Vassar address for the commencement address a couple years ago, during COVID, by the way, done in his backyard. It talks about his hustle. You sold cable.
I was a cable television salesman.
He sold cable!
I did not know that.
Then I graduated to a real estate agent.
Fun fact of the day.
But it's that level of hustle and how you really made your first movie, finding, just explain, please, how you launched it, because I don't think most people realize that.
Paranormal
The
or
paranormal
something else?
movie.
Oh, the paranormal movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, the paranormal movie, the pared down version of the story, it was a long adventure. But I'd grown up in my 20s doing acquisitions. And for those not in the entertainment business, there's kind of two ways a studio gets to distribute movies. They make them, or they buy finished ones. And acquisitions is the part of the company that buys finished movies. And I'd done that for a studio for a while, and then I went off on my own. I started producing movies. I made a handful of bad movies. And then I saw this little movie called Paranormal Activity. And I didn't know what it would turn into, but I thought it was very commercial. And I called the director and I said, I saw your movie, what's happening with it? I think it should be in a movie theater. He said, well, I've sold it, it was at the time straight to video for $100,000. It's just gonna come out as a video movie. And I said, is the deal signed? And he said, no, it's not signed. I said, well, that's good. I said, let's get together. And we got together and I made an agreement with him to share in the movie if I could ever get a better distribution arrangement than the one he had. And spent 3 years. You saw an early version of the movie, didn't you, at that time? No, not.
I'm a bigger chicken than Jamie.
What's that?
I'm a bigger
chicken than
Jamie.
me.
Yeah, right. Anyway, it was 3 years, and we showed it to a bunch of different people, all of whom had already seen it, and they all said no. I really struggled with getting someone to see this movie in a movie theater with an audience. And if you watch the movie with an audience, anyone would say it would work. But because DVDs had been all over Hollywood, everyone said that we've seen it, we passed, we're not interested. But I finally actually sold the remake rights to the movie. And I never thought it would make a good remake. But I put in the deal, it was with DreamWorks, I put in the deal, I made it contractual that before they embarked on the remake of the movie, they would have to test screen the movie with a minimum of 300 people. And in the contract, I said, that way you'll know what parts of the movie will work and what won't work, so when you write the remake, we'll know what to use and what not to use. And I said to Oren, the director, who didn't want to remake the movie, I said, let me do this, and I promise you, if I can get decision makers into a room with an audience, they're never going to talk about the remake again. And it worked. And we did a big screening in the Valley, and the remake never came up again. And the rest was history. We're six
Jason,
movies in.
Just to keep on track talking about this partnership, which is the...
Jamie asked.
Pardon?
No, nothing at all. Go on.
Well, I asked you briefly.
It's the reason I'm here with you.
I'm going to herd you cats, but just to ask you briefly, when you said approach Jamie for Halloween, were you thinking, wouldn't it be cool to have her in this movie, or were you thinking this is going to develop? Give me a brief answer.
Say again, I'm sorry.
This is going to develop into a broader partnership, or just it would be cool to have her in this movie?
Oh, no, I just thought it would be cool to have her in the movie.
No.
I mean,
Yes, for sure.
You knew from the beginning.
What happened is that a creative human was born from this movie. I've been a creator my whole life. I've just been that person. I've written things for a long time, and I just never had a possibility to do so. I was an actress. I'm cute. I look good in a bathing suit. I'm funny. You'll laugh at me. You'll like me. But you won't necessarily lean in and say, tell us your ideas. And what happened is we went off and made Halloween. I didn't even know it was a trilogy. Someone on this stage, not Kim, didn't mention that we were doing 3 of them, which they were, apparently. And what happened is the movie was such an incredible experience creatively working with David that I came back from the movie and an idea that I'd had when I was 19 years old.
Right.
An eco-horror film at the time. I called it Mother Nature, about maybe what we're doing to the planet. And I was, in high school in 1976. This is like the late 70s, early 80s. And I came back from the movie Halloween, and I was going to hire somebody to write the screenplay. And my husband, who's sweet, said to me, well, why don't you write it? And I said, well, I don't know how to write a screenplay. He looked at me and said, Jamie, you know how to write a screenplay. And I literally hired a friend's kid who knew how to work Final Draft, which is, who's laughing?
It's a screenwriting.
Okay, screenwriter here. I mean, literally, I didn't know how to do it. I wrote a 45-page treatment. I said, can you import it into Final Draft, and then I'll put the dialogue in. And I wrote a script, brought it to them, and that is how our creative life has now expanded into, I have a company, Comet Pictures, under the Blumhouse label. And we're doing a lot of damn business together because, if not now, when? If not me, who? Which is the motto I adopted when I turned 60. Get shit done before you die.
You got a lot done before 60, Jamie.
I understand, but ultimately the tick-tock of the clock, and I don't mean the tick-tock that all the kids use and you get recipes and shit. I'm talking about the old father time, and I'm 64 years old, and I have stuff to do before I go.
So you are thinking of, am I right, directing Mother Nature?
I would like to direct Mother Nature. I would like to do a lot of things. I have a lot to do. That is the intention. We'll see.
And a graphic novel?
It is being turned into a graphic novel right now, which, again, just came out of the creative process. My husband and I collect cartoons, New Yorker cartoons. One of the artists who I collect called me when we were talking about things, and I mentioned that I had written the screenplay. He asked to read it. He read it. He came back and said, I would like to adapt it as a graphic novel before the movie comes out. It's being adapted. Again,
Creative people doing
creative people,
things.
and you know, from my standpoint, and I'm up here at a business conference at 64 years old with this impresario of the movie business, and you, Kim, who apparently we met when our children were young at Toys R Us, remember that place? Is you need to put yourself in the path of something. Nothing's going to happen if you're waiting for it. You need to put yourself in the path. And I'm putting myself in the path. I went to him. I also, by the way, saw a picture of my husband in a magazine.
Let me just say, if you don't know, Jamie's husband is the great Christopher Guest.
My husband is a man named Christopher Guest, a very talented actor, musician, director. But I saw his picture. But the point is, before I knew any of that, I saw a picture of him in a magazine and said out loud to my friend, Deborah Hill, full circle.
From Halloween.
From Halloween, sitting on my couch in my apartment in West Hollywood, oh, I'm going to marry him. It's a true story. Saw a picture of him in a magazine, said I was going to marry him. Called his agent, left my number. He never called me, ran into him at a restaurant 2 months later, married him 4 months later, 38 years ago. So my point is...
She really did get stuff done.
My point is...
Before she was 60, she got some
put yourself in the path of something happening.
Yes.
Nothing happens, nothing changes unless something changes. There's my big business
I
pitch.
like that.
Okay, I'm going to talk to Jason about a thing in a second.
Please talk to Jason.
I will, but I'm going to ask you about one more thing, which is this other project you have in the works at Amazon called Sticky About a Maple Syrup.
Yes. So one of the great joys, it came through Blumhouse. It is Blumhouse. We are doing this as partnership. It's a TV series. Do you guys remember the story of the great maple syrup heist, where thieves made off with $20 million worth of maple syrup from the Maple Syrup Federation in Canada? They drained the maple syrup cans and filled them with water, and stole millions and millions and millions of dollars of maple syrup. And the only reason they found out about it was that water condenses, and somebody, when checking the barrels, noticed that a bunch of the barrels had water on the outside, which maple syrup doesn't create, and they found out. And we're making a TV series for Amazon based on the great maple syrup heist from Canada. It's called The Sticky.
Look for it. Okay, Jason, we're going to talk for a minute now about the state of this industry, which is very much turmoil, change, transformation. Jason wrote an op-ed very recently. As I'm sure most of you know, if not all, Netflix hit a big wall a couple weeks ago now, lost billions of dollars in value. Of course, there's been a lot of what went wrong at Netflix. Is streaming hitting its ceiling at give or take 200 million subscribers? Does this work? Whether the industry. Jason wrote an op-ed in the New York Times addressing what may or may not be going wrong at Netflix, and I'm going to let you tell us about that.
Well, it ties into our conversation, which I've always believed that you, by letting artists and creators, and I would include ourselves in that group, participate in the profits of what you do, rather than getting paid up front, you achieve two things. You make better movie shows and better television shows and movies because you're aligned with your financier. And the financier saves money because as much as we all try to make things that are commercial, most things are not commercial. And so Netflix changed the business by essentially paying people, producers, writers, directors, actors, upfront, as if what they had made had been a hit. So every single thing that you see on Netflix, anyone involved with any of those shows or movies, have been paid already up front. It doesn't matter if it's streamed once or 1 billion times. And what that does is make the process of actually making things very expensive. And I also think it makes the things less good. So I opened my big mouth. I've been saying this for a long time, but now people might listen because of the stock price. So I opened my big mouth, and I wrote a story about that, and most people were happy about it, and some people weren't.
I mean, we talked about this because Jason has a trilogy, an Exorcist trilogy at Universal. I mean, sorry, yeah.
Yes.
It's for...
With David Gordon Green.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
But that's a flat, they gave you a lump sum to do that.
That I reference in my op-ed, which is that I took advantage of the market and did exactly what I don't think is a good thing to do. But when you have no choice, you have no choice. So I said, if you can't beat them, join them. But we have movies and shows at Netflix, and we have movies and TV shows with all the streamers, and we have participated in the pay up front model because I got to keep my business going. But I would much prefer to not get paid up front and get paid only if the thing that I made did well.
Yeah.
And one other thing that Jason and I are in partnership about, which I think the marketplace will be really excited about, is I've been a fan of Patricia Cornwell's Scarpetta books for, 25, 26 years now. And Jason's company and Comet Pictures bought the rights to all of them to turn them into a TV series that we are going to produce together. Again, put yourself in the path of it.
Exactly.
And make something happen. And I'm really excited.
Do we know where that's going to be?
Where that's going to be? No.
Who it's for?
We don't know that part yet,
Yes.
but we know it'll be in about a year.
You know, you're going to work on it, and it's going to be...
We'll give you the scoop when we have it. You all heard it.
Yes, I'm going to hold you to
Scoop.
Then the last, I think the most recent two Halloween films that you two have made grossed $386 million at the box office. And as Jason, to his point about Netflix, you know, when you release a movie theatrically, there's a waterfall of profit that comes when you watch it on the plane or when it's licensed somewhere. There's a lot of ways to make money as opposed to the one-off of streamer. So that's $386 million in cash, and that's supposed to be the final one. Very few people want to quit with those kind of grosses, but is it really the last?
It's a trilogy.
It's a trilogy. The rights revert to our friend Malik, and what he does now, I would be hard-pressed to believe at some point he won't look at those rights and think maybe, but who knows? Maybe it'll be a TV show next, who knows? But we contracted for 3 movies, and this is our last one.
And I just came last Thursday from Las Vegas, where they dragged me out on a stage to talk about the new Halloween, the last Halloween, called Halloween Ends, and to talk about Laurie Strode's life. And I'm telling you, for me, I remember I told you I was 19 years old. I'm 64 years old. And I stood on that stage in front of 5,000, 10,000, however many. And they love her. They love Laurie Strode. Like she's their sister, friend. And I cannot tell you, you can't experience a movie like that at home. You must be in a movie theater, and to be in what is that called? A hotel in Las Vegas of theater owners, exhibitors, who bring people into their theaters. It's a communal experience, the movie business. It's meant to be shared by a group of people, and it was thrilling because they went beyond bananas when we showed them the little teaser that we made for them.
Oh, which I forgot to introduce, so if I can, maybe we can show it now.
You're going to show it? What?
No?
Happy Halloween, Michael. Oh, maybe just a little amuse-bouche
Well, you know what?
before your lovely lunch.
I was supposed to do it at the beginning, but I really quite like it at the end.
Oh, I think it's better at the end.
Better at the end. See, I knew that somewhere. So I am just going to tell all of you that we are out of time. I was going to ask Jason to look in the crystal ball, but he'll have to do that next time. Thank both of you. Let's thank both of these fabulous
Thanks, you
panelists.
guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. Were you saying the crystal ball of what you think is going to happen?
In the movie business.
It's going to, oh, in the movie business. Oh, I thought you meant with Halloween.
Oh, no. Halloween's going to be a hit.
It's going to be a monster.
It's going to be a hit.
Pun intended. It's a joke.
It's a joke.
It's a business conference, I understand. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, guys.